Charlie Kirk, Redeemed, A Political Class Finds Its Lost Cause by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Before he was killed last week, Charlie Kirk left a helpful compendium of words, ones that would greatly aid those who sought to understand his legacy and import. It is somewhat difficult to match these words with the manner in which Kirk is presently being memorialized in mainstream discourse. New York Times columnist Ezra Klein dubbed Kirk one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion and a man who was practicing politics in exactly the right way. California Governor Gavin Newsom hailed Kirk's passion and commitment to debate, advising us to continue Kirk's work by engaging with each other across ideology through spirited discourse. Atlantic writer Sally Jenkins saluted Kirk, claiming he argued with civility and asserting his death was a significant loss for those who believed engagement can help bridge disagreements. Why the do these people think SJW-owned compilations are actually a medium to legitimately arrive at the truth through spirited discourse among interlocutors? That is not the case. Fuck! How are you so easily duped? Or do you have worms for brains? What the God, I hate aesthetics perverts. Like the civility fetishists are unbearable, dude. Liberals are so stupid sometimes. The mentions of debate and engagement are references to Kirk's campus tours, during which he visited various colleges to take on whoever come may. That this aspect of Kirk's work would be so attractive to the writers and politicians is understandable. There's, after all, a pervasive worry among the political class that college students, ensconced in their own bubbles, could use a bit of shock therapy from a man unconcerned with preferred pronouns, trigger warnings, and the humanity of Palestinians. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a great writer, but it also shows that the political class's obsession with universities binds it to everything else. Oh my God, what a great take. I know. That's why campus frenzy shit goes so nutty mode in mainstream discourse, because all of these assholes went to the same Ivy League institutions. So that's all they worry about. Unbearable. How much of the first 6 to like 10 months of Israel's genocide was spent on talking about college campus activism? Oh my Lord. I almost said 6, 7, and I know you guys were going to be annoying, so I didn't say it. But it also shows that the political class's obsession with the universities blinds it to everything else, and the everything else of Kirk's politics amounted to little more than a loathing of those whose mere existence provoked this ire. It is not just, for instance, that Kirk held disagreeable views, that he was pro-life, that he believed in public executions, or that he rejected the separation of church and state. It's that Kirk reveled in open bigotry. Indeed, claims that Kirk's civility are tough to square with his penchant for demeaning members of the LGBTQ community as freaks and referring to trans people with the slur, the T word. Faced with the prospect of Kamala Harris' presidency, Kirk told his audience that the threat had to be averted because Harris wanted to kidnap your child via the trans agenda. Garden variety transphobia is sadly unremarkable, but Kirk was a master of folding seemingly discordant bigotries into each other as he defined the American way of life as marriage, home ownership, and child rearing free of the lesbian, gay, transgender garbage in their school, adding that he did not want kids to have to hear the Muslim call to prayer 5 times a day. He also once famously said if Kamala Harris wins, then they're going to import Haitians into the country and export white people, something along those lines. I'm actually paraphrasing. Don't kill me, okay? Something along those lines. I can't recall the exact quote off the top of my mind. I know that's like illegal now. God forbid you say Charlie Kirk actually said something entirely different, and then the actual quote itself is not entirely different at all. He just like got 3 words wrong, max, and they didn't actually change what he was saying. The American way of life was Christendom, Kirk claimed. In Islam, the sword the left is using to slit the throat of America was antithetical to that. Large dedicated Islamic areas were a threat to America, Kirk asserted, and New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani was a Mohammedan. I love that one. That one's actually awesome. Oh my God. Yeah, Mohammedan. Dusting off the tomes of racism. All right. With Kirk supposing that anyone trying to see Mohammedism take over the West would love to have New York a prior Anglo center under Mohammedan rule. Kirk habitually railed against black crime, claiming that prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. He repeated the accusations against Yusuf Salam, a member of the exonerated Central Park 5 who is now a New York City councilman, calling him a disgusting pig who had gotten away with gang rape. Whatever distaste Kirk held for blacks was multiplied when he turned to those from Haiti. Haiti was, by Kirk's lights, a country infested with demonic voodoo whose migrants were raping your women and hunting you down at night. These Haitians, as well as undocumented immigrants from other countries, were having a field day, per Kirk, and coming for your daughter next. The only hope was Donald Trump. Yeah, I was wrong. He actually didn't say Haitians were going to replace the white population. He said they were going to come to the country and your daughters, your white daughters. That's even, yeah. yet another instance where my paraphrasing of Charlie Kirk's actual opinion on a particular issue was actually much kinder than his true opinion on that issue. First time in chat, my roommate always talks shit about you, so I decided to look into you more since I saw you on Trash Taste. Turns out we have similar politics, and now I've been watching clips for a few weeks, and now I'm here live. Talking shit had the opposite effect. Hell yeah, chatter. I hope other people are also just as open-minded as you are, and as you were in that moment. Yeah, Ezra Klein is on a tear, by the way. We're going to get to the other shit that he did. These Haitians, as well as undocumented immigrants from other countries, were having a field day per Kirk, coming for your daughter next. The only hope was Donald Trump, who had to prevail, lest Haitians become your masters. The point of this so-called mastery was as familiar as it was conspiratorial, the Great Replacement. There was an anti-white agenda, Kirk howled, one that sought to make the country more like the third world. The southern border was a dumping ground of the planet, he claimed, and a magnet for the rapists, the thugs, the murderers, the fighting age males. They're coming from across the world, from China, from Russia, from Middle Eastern countries, he said. And they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in. You can probably imagine where this line of thinking eventually went. Jewish donors, Kirk claimed, were the number one funding mechanism of radical open border neoliberal quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. Indeed, the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country. This is why it's also funny that Nick Fuentes hated him, because they believe the same things, right? The only difference is Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel, Charlie Kirk is pro-Israel. Kirk's bigotry was not personal, but extended to the institution he founded, Turning Point USA. Crystal Clanton, the group's former national field director, once texted a fellow Turning Point employee, "I hate black people, like them all. I hate blacks, end of story." One of the group's advisors, Rip McIntosh, once published a newsletter featuring an essay from a pseudonymous writer that said blacks had become socially incompatible with other races and that black culture was unfixable and a crime-ridden mess. In 2022, after 3 black football players were killed at another college, Meg Miller was unfixable and a crime-ridden mess. In 2022, after 3 black football players were killed at another college, Meg Miller, president of Turning Point chapter at the University of Missouri, joked, in air quotes, in a social media message, if they would have killed 4 more N-words, with a hard R, for those of you who are listening at home and not reading along, we would have had the whole week off. Kirk subscribed to some of the most disreputable and harmful beliefs that this country has ever known, but it is still chilling to think that those beliefs would be silenced by a gunshot. The tragedy is personal. Kirk was robbed of his life, and his children and family will forever live with the knowledge that a visual record of that robbery is just an internet search away. And the tragedy is national. Political violence ends conversation and invites war. Its rejection is paramount to a functioning democracy and a free society. Amazing words. I fully agree with everything he's saying. Political violence is a virus, Klein noted. This assertion is true. It is also at odds with Kirk's own words. It's not that Kirk merely, as Klein put it, defended the Second Amendment. It's that Kirk endorsed hurting people to advance his preferred policy outcomes. God damn, Ta-Nehisi Coates does not even let up for a brief moment in this entire article. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. In 2022, when Kirk was frustrated, for instance, by the presence of Leah Thomas on the University of Pennsylvania's women's swim team, Kirk did not call for spirited discourse. Instead, while discussing a recent championship tournament, he said he would have liked to have seen a group of fathers descend from the stands, forming a line in front of Leah Thomas and saying, "Hey, tough guy, you want to get in the pool? Because you're going to have to come through us." Mere weeks before his death, Kirk reveled in Trump's deployment of federal troops to D.C. Shock and awe. Force, he wrote. We're taking our country back from these cockroaches. Great. Ezra has followed up his column on how Kirk's bigotry and McCarthyism were doing politics the right way by podcasting with Ben Shapiro, where he fails to challenge Shapiro's genocide support and gives an empathetic hearing of Shapiro's fascistic Lions and Scavengers book. I'm not saying don't platform Ben Shapiro, okay? It's just, these things are going to happen. But if you're going to do it, make it an honest conversation. You said I'm not saying don't platform Sharpie, but I'm saying don't platform Ezra Klein. Okay, dude. Charlie Kirk. Ta-Nehisi Coates, still talking about Charlie Kirk. We're back to it. We're taking our country back from these cockroaches. That's what Charlie Kirk said about deploying the military on U.S. soil. And in 2023, Kirk told his audience that the then President Joe Biden was a corrupt tyrant who should be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America. What are we to make of a man who called for the execution of the American president and then was executed himself? What are we to make of an NFL that once, on one hand, encourages us to end racism, and on the other, urges us to commemorate an unreconstructed white supremacist? And what of the writers, the thinkers, the pundits who cannot separate the great crime of Kirk's death from the malignancy of his public life? Can they truly be so ignorant of the words of a man they have so rushed to memorialize? I don't know. But the most telling detail in Klein's column was that, for all his praise, there was not a single word in the piece from Kirk himself. That is by design, by the way. Okay? That's the whole point. Because if Ezra Klein, who is the most esteemed liberal, would utter a one singular word from Charlie Kirk, it would give the game away that his progressive bona fides is just nothing. That's also part of the reason why none of the people that are highlighting Charlie Kirk are talking about the shit that he said. Ryan Grimm doesn't see it that way. Yeah, well, I'm disagreeing with Ryan Grimm on this, okay? I love Ryan, but it's okay. We can have healthy disagreement. More than a century and a half ago, this country ignored the explicit words of men who sought to raise an empire of slavery. It subsequently transformed those men into gallant knights who sought only to preserve their beloved Camelot. There was a fatigue in certain quarters with Reconstruction, which is to say multiracial democracy, and a desire for a reunion to make America great again. Thus, in the late 19th century and much of the 20th, this country's most storied intellectuals transfigured hate mongers into heroes and ignored their words, just as, right now, some are ignoring Kirk's. Words are not violence, nor are they powerless. Burying the truth of the Confederacy, rewriting its aims and ideas, and ignoring its animating words allowed for the terrorization of the black population, the imposition of apartheid, and the destruction of democracy. The rewriting and ignoring were done not just by Confederates, but also by putative allies for whom the reduction of black people to serfdom was the unfortunate price of white unity. Oof. On fire. The paper is on fire. The import of this history has never been clearer than in this moment, when the hard question must be asked: if you would look away from the words of Charlie Kirk, from what else would you look away? God damn, dude. God damn it. I said something that is nowhere near as poetic about the Ezra Klein piece, which was, and I'm fully in agreement with Ta-Nehisi here, which is that Ezra Klein, at worst, likes and subscribes to Charlie Kirk's worldview, or at best, does not think it's so bad that it needs its own analysis, or it needs to be mentioned even a little bit. And not to get like the friend who's too woke here, but I do think that there is a tinge of, if not white supremacy, a tinge of, I guess, privilege there, where you just don't think that this is a real issue at all, you know? Apathy. White apathy, maybe? That's it. You do know that Ezra Klein is Jewish, right? Okay. So, do you think this impacts him in the same way that it does a black person or a brown person? He clearly doesn't seem to think so. Even if others might not think he's white because of his Jewish background, there's definitely some who don't. He seems to think that doesn't matter. But yeah, Ezra also then turned around and had a conversation with Ben Shapiro.